Hey, y'all, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are going to be having a wonderful conversation with an old friend of mine, somebody who I admire, who I am a little bit of a fan, and really just a beloved small business owner, creative entrepreneur in my hometown of Baton Rouge. Today, we're going to be chatting with Madeline Ellis. She is the founder and designer and basically the heartbeat of Mimosa Handcrafted. Madeline Ellis has been intentionally honing her skills in jewelry design since she founded Mimosa Handcrafted in 2008. Madeline uses the ancient art of lost wax casting alongside her team at Mimosa to create unique bronze, sterling silver, and 14 karat gold pieces, including precious and semi precious stones. Originally a landscape architect, Madeline now blends her love for nature, culture, and the human experience with her passion for design into wearable storytelling that offers a hopeful connection to the world around us and each other. Co founder of the Mid City Makers Market in 2015, Madeline remains active in the local creative community. Committed to philanthropy, she frequently uses her work in collaboration for fundraising projects that are close to her heart. Please welcome Madeline Ellis. Welcome to The Composed Artist, the podcast where we explore the intersection of artistry, entrepreneurship, and self improvement and continue to pursue a more composed life. I'm your host, Stephanie, an artist specializing in live wedding painting, living in the vibrant and soulful city of New Orleans. Over the past decade, my job has taken me all over the world, meeting and creating art in front of thousands of people, and has allowed me to create a colorful life for myself and my family. Now, I help other artists build confidence, develop their techniques, and fall in love with the art of live wedding painting. I invite you to join us for inspiring stories of creative journeys, practical tips for running a successful art business, and honest conversations about the joys and challenges of running a studio and being a parent. This podcast is here to keep you company, keep you entertained, and is full of resources to help you on your journey to create a business that feeds your soul, makes an impact, and is insanely profitable. The Composed Artist is the podcast for the bold, creative, passionate, and genuine artist. Let's get started. Well, Madeline, I'm so excited that you're here. Honestly, I'm honored. I own your jewelry. I remember when you started your company in 2008. I remember every little publication, every little shout out in all of my favorite magazines in Baton Rouge. Just so fun. And then also the seeing, like walking into a store and seeing your display, and you do a beautiful job with displaying your jewelry and the whole brand, the whole experience of it. It's an experience that we all can participate in, which is just so fun. That's awesome. So please tell a little bit about your story, because you were a landscape architect major and now you run a jewelry business. So what happened? How did you make that shift?
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And I'm honestly, truly, like, I admire your work so much and what you do and everything. So thank you so much for thinking to have me.
Of course.
So for my story though, it does feel like it's so grassroots and bootstrapped and scrappy from the very beginning. Like my first arts market was with a tent we found, like the bottom on the side of the road and the top from somewhere else, and like put it together. And so, yeah, from the beginning, it was just do it as we go. And so, like, along the way, it's been very slow organic growth with our customers, with everything. So it does feel like a big group effort. And it's really fun to celebrate like the milestones as they come, because everybody's been there since the very beginning. So I guess I mean, if we go way back, I started making jewelry when I was a little kid, like in elementary school. My grandmother gave me like some cross stitch beads that she was using. And then my mom had like a Tupperware box that we put them all in. And I just started, fishing wire and that kind of thing, make friendship bracelets. And I did that all through grade school, high school, got to college, and I was like still collecting beads. We would travel. In landscape architecture, you travel a lot. So like it's part of the program, which was a wonderful part of the program. But everybody would joke that I had like this homing device for finding bead stores like in all other countries, like we'd be in Thailand or somewhere, and I'm like, can we go in there? And then there would be beads everywhere. Like, how in the world are you finding a bead store in Thailand? So I had all these accumulated beads. I had like tackle boxes that I was moving from like apartment to apartment in college, just for fun. Not I have some dream of having a jewelry company ever, anything like that. Anyway, so I graduated. I got my landscape job. I love landscape. It was never like I got to figure out something else to do. I absolutely enjoyed my time doing that. But it was not an instant gratification kind of work. It was like work on a master plan for several years and maybe or maybe not see it implemented depending on the budget at the end of the project. So at the end of the day, it wasn't like, oh, I made a thing. And I'm very like hands-on kind of person. So I'd go home and make jewelry and then be like, oh, look, I made a thing. And then the things just piled up and piled up. And my husband was like, maybe you should sell your things. Like, start a business. And I was like, what? For what? How, and he had already had a business at that point. So my husband was like, you have to maybe like sell these things that are just piling up. Like our dining room table was covered in jewelry. And I'm like, to who, where? And he's like, oh, let's go get you an LLC. We'll go downtown, sign you up at the arts market. And that was all like another world to me, but I was like, okay, let's do it. So I got into the arts market. I started selling like on the, first Saturday of the month. And then it was a whole different experience from like making stuff and like maybe giving it to friends and family to like setting up my stuff and putting on display and hoping people like it and getting to know the other artists and makers and this whole other world that I had no, like experience with before. But what I found was like explaining the pieces or talking to the customers was like as much fun as making the stuff. And so I would get as excited like at home, like making the things for the next month to be like, who am I going to see? We'd always joke that it was kind of like tailgating without the sports. Like you get to just hang out all day at the table and like talk to people. But it's about like art and the things that you make. Anyway, so I did that for years, and my boss was like super, super supportive. And if there was like a festival or a longer show, she'd let me take off early or, take the Friday off or something. And she'd always wear my stuff. So we'd be in meetings and she'd be like, Madeline made this. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. So it was really, she was wonderful. And then basically what happened was that started growing on the side. I started selling on Etsy and it was really fun, but I got pregnant. And I was on maternity leave and it was not paid, which was kind of a great opportunity to see if my income from the jewelry could like supplement enough for us to for me to not have a full-time day job. So I was home for 4 months and it worked. And so we were like, well, maybe this could work. But I did miss landscape. And it was also like, I went to school for a really long time to get that job. And we have like the #1 program in the country, or at the time we did. So there are a lot of graduates and really good graduates, and all the positions in this area are filled immediately. So to get a job, it was not the kind of job that you're like, oh, I'll just get another one. You're like, want to keep it because there's like several people in line, after you. So that was a big decision. Like, wait, am I gonna quit this job that I went to school for 7 years for and probably still have student loans for, to make jewelry that's not even wasn't on my radar as a thing to do? But it was like I'd be able to stay home with my son, have the flexibility of working kind of around his schedule and not have to put him in daycare. And then I could always go back to landscape if I wanted to. So I was like, well, I went back to work part-time, and then it was like a lot to juggle, like a new baby, a side business, and the full-time job or a part-time job. So one of them had to give, and the job is the one that I chose to give. But my boss was wonderful. Like, I felt like I was backing out. Like, I'm sorry, I don't know if this is a good idea, but I think I'm going to try it. And she was like, we'll have a spot for you no matter what, whatever. And that made it really easy for me. I know not everybody has that situation, but once I turned, I never really looked back. Once I was able to put all my eggs into the, Mimosa basket at that point, and be with my son. But the position the business ended up moving to New Orleans 6 months later. So I would have had to do something anyway. So it's kind of funny how it worked.
Wow. What a gift to have had control in that moment. because it's really
Yeah,
hard to make sometimes decisions are for like big change
absolutely.
decisions
For
are like
me,
forced on us. Yeah, you wouldn't would you have moved or would you have been like, "Oh,
no,
no, this"
no.
yeah.
We would have been like, oh, well, I guess I'll find another landscape job or, figure something out.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it worked out that way. And then it also, in hindsight, was kind of like, wow, okay, so like even the safe job that I feel like I'm getting a paycheck every week and the whatever, like something can happen with that. So it was like, it wasn't like before I thought like, oh, I'm leaving this safe, sure thing. The safe, sure thing isn't always even safer, sure. And even
Yeah.
around 2008, when I started it, that was the recession that happened. And our class was like one of the first classes who had graduated and gotten jobs at that point because we were just like maybe 2 years after graduation. So there were a lot of the first hires and there were a lot of first people to be let go during that recession. So it kind of felt
Wow.
like those jobs aren't, like that safe, I guess.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was going all in on jewelry and, raising my son, growing it, little bit by bit, doing bigger shows, starting to get wholesale accounts. Then I had my daughter 2 years later. And right before I had her, I was like, I want to do lost wax casting. And we found some guy like on Craigslist in Mississippi and bought all of his equipment. And then I found out I was pregnant. I was like, we're not going to learn casting right now. So we sold it all, which is crazy because like I would love to still have all that equipment. But, because we got like a really good deal on it. But anyway, so I had my daughter, and then I guess a couple of years after that, Dawson he had a business partner. We both graduated in landscape architecture. He had a landscape company, and he came home and was like, "I think I'm gonna sell my part of the business to my business partner and maybe join you making jewelry." And I was like, "Oh, well, wait, because
Whoa.
like your job is like our steady thing, and this is just like, I mean, it's doing good, but it's not like, it's a lot of eggs to put in the mimosa basket." But I was also kind of like, and this is sort of how our relationship and our marriage has been. We we're not overthinkers in that sense. I personally am an overthinker, but like when it comes to be with him, I trust him, and that it's been hard earned trust over the years and years. But it's like he kind of has more of a vision for things, like long distance vision, bigger vision, that kind of thing. And I'm more like, I'd still literally be at my dining room table making jewelry to this day, and probably still be a landscape architect if he wasn't like, hey, you should sell this. Because I just, anyway. So when he came home and said that, I was like, okay, all right, let's do it. And it wasn't like we had like weeks and weeks of talks or like any of that kind of stuff. We just kind of went for it. And in hindsight, it's like, oh my God, that was kind of a big decision to like just do that. But it worked. Things work out the way they do, and that happened to work out, I think. It took a while to do the transition of him selling the business, and that's like a whole process if you've ever had that happen.
Mhm.
But so by the time it was done, we were like ready to run with Mimosa, because it was like you still feel like, oh, I got to do all this stuff to like wrap that up. But it did give us, some stability in like a launching pad for, financially even to move into Mimosa full time together. We were able, at that point, he was like, all right, if we're going to do this thing, we're going to do it. You want to cast, whatever that even means. Let's get the equipment and do it. And he is a figure it out kind of guy and started watching videos on YouTube. And like I said, we both graduated in landscape architecture, but you can learn a lot of stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
And we got the equipment, we pieced together stuff. We were on vacation in Florida and found some ex-professor who had like a vacuum, was like part of the casting equipment. We like drove over and picked that up. We're all over the place finding like cheap equipment that we could find. And we still to this day use that actually. So a lot of that stuff is just timeless equipment that you can use. It doesn't have, you can literally find it on, well, maybe Facebook Marketplace now. I don't know if people shop on Craigslist anymore, but anyway, so we got all the equipment and just started casting. Like and I remember like the first cast, the timing, you have to wait a certain amount of time, while till the metal gets hot, till the mold is melted out, whatever. And we didn't have all that figured out, like honed in to where like we could say, okay, we're going to cast it this time tomorrow or whatever. So like the first cast, I think was in the middle of the night, like at midnight or 1 or something, like the way it all fell. And I remember him like coming and waking me up and being like, It was like a pecan. We still have it. Actually, it's in the store. If you look, it's like the first, we have it on a little shelf. It's the first cast. And then the second cast was a complete failure. The first one was perfection. And that's like the universe just being like, you can do it.
Oh,
And then the
yeah.
second one was like, but it's going to be really hard and it's not going to like come easy forever. So the first one was like, you can do it. The second one was like, but you have to earn it. So then we spent like
Wow.
years earning it, making a million mistakes and that kind of stuff. But pretty much he started with me in the summer of like, I think 2017. And probably by the fall, we had our first full-time employee. I'd had a couple like high school after school kids help me, packaging and that kind of stuff before that, but not like I was too timid to actually hire a whole person,
It
but he
takes a
was like,
lot.
yeah. And that's not where my strengths are. So he was like, and he had already had his business. So he knew about hiring people and whatever. That was like, he had tons of teams for landscape crews and stuff. So we hired the first person, and we had actually gotten a really big project at that time that we kind of realized like, oh, it's going to take more than just us to do it. And that was really kind. And this Jay Papasan, I don't know, he wrote the book, The One Thing, but he kind of took a leap of faith with us and was like, I'm going to order like 500 of these. And we were like, oh my gosh, hold on a minute. And like had to go hire somebody and,
And what was his name again?
Jay
What's the
Papasan. I'm saying
Mhm.
it right.
Yeah. I wanna make
But
sure to
yeah,
link that to link his
yeah, he
book
wrote the
too.
book, The One Thing. It's great. It's a time
Yeah.
management. It's wonderful. Anyway, so that order like really kind of was a launch into the next level of like things that we were like trying to figure out, but it like pushed us to like really figure them out and figure them out at scale. So
Mm.
at that point, we were like, okay, well then we need to buy this equipment and we need to buy that thing, and oh, and how do you package this mini, and how do so we had to figure a lot of things out. And then once we did for that one project, it was like, oh, well now we can do that, and now we
Yeah.
made all these mistakes and figure, so and learn from them. Anyway, so from there, we just organic, still slow organic, adding equipment, adding people every couple of years. We'd add another, before it was still everybody does everything. And really until the last couple of few years, maybe since COVID, it was everybody does everything. And now we have much more specific roles. Actually, one of the guys that works with me today was like, it's like we're a circus. And I was like, it is like we all have our little sideshow under the big tent.
I love that,
The
and
big
then the
top.
employees, I bet they are able to become experts in that one in their task,
Yeah,
and then
it's a
they bring a
lot.
lot.
And like there is crossover. People still do other things together, and that there's been a lot of value in that. There and early on, not early on, but like maybe 4 or so years ago, we were all, for example, all of us were buffing, and that was like the whole team all day on one day, which was it was a lot, but it was also like people who had never had hands on with the jewelry that they were either selling or shipping or making the wax for or whatever. All of a sudden they were seeing it from a different perspective, like, oh, this is what you have to deal with when you buff a piece, or like they were seeing how their part affected or was affected by that task. And I feel like
Yes.
we're able to give feedback, and we were all able to like understand it in a different in a better way. So I still think it's very valuable for people to cross over, when maybe not all the time, but at least to be able to appreciate the work that goes into everybody's role, because you kind of forget, like you're so focused, like head down on your little piece of the pie, that when you have to step in and do somebody else's, you're like, oh Lord, this is a lot. I didn't know it was like all this, so it that can be really helpful.
Yeah,
But
that
yeah,
that
so
reminds me that reminds me of when I was a graphic designer. I had to work closely with the copywriters because I was designing like a web page and I was making it all pretty and user friendly and everything, but then they would write twice as much copy and it with all
yeah,
the paragraphs of text. I'd be like,
yeah,
"Wait, you're messing with my design." And they'd be like, "Well, give me
yeah,
more space." And
yeah,
so
totally.
understanding all the all the hands that you're holding in the process of creation in a business, that's so important. That's
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're encouraging that. That's awesome. Are you still using cheap art supplies? Look, you don't have to tell me, but if you want to level up, you have to use better supplies. Come on, let's invest a little. I've been using Rosemary and Company for my paintbrushes for the past 5 years or so, and I have never thrown away one of these brushes. The quality is unmatched, and they're like reasonably priced. I hate to say it, but they're the best. So I love a long handled paintbrush. Okay. I love a hog hair or an ivory, which is kind of a mixed bristle hair. And Rosemary and Company, they have like so many options. So I would check them out. The website is www.rosemaryandco.com. That's Rosemary spelled Rosemary and co.com. Or you can just click the link in my show notes and it'll take you directly to my personal wish list. It's all the brushes that I use and recommend. So check them out and thank me later. What made you want to start? Like, what made you want to try lost art, like the
Lost wax
wax
casting.
lost wax casting? How did you hear about
Yeah.
that? Why did you want to invest in all of this equipment? Because it's a task. Like
Yeah.
that's like very hands on. Like you're wearing like protection PPE and like face
Yeah.
shields and all kind of stuff. What made you want
Yeah.
to go from things you can do on your dining room table to like very very technical hands-on hard work kind of jewelry
Well,
making?
I started with beads, which I love, but I kind of was mostly using PMC, which is it's precious metal clay, where the metal is like imagine pulverized into powder in a clay binder, like mashed into clay. So you could make a piece out of this clay, and then fire it. It burns away the clay, and you're just left with the metal. But it's very limited in what you could do with it. So I could
Mm.
only make little tiny pieces. I could only do certain kinds of pieces, and only so many at a time. And I wanted to do like big cuffs and big rings and things like that. And I just couldn't do it with that. And I did ceramic jewelry for a long time, which you can't make a big ceramic bracelet and bang it around and live like the kind of like I'm always outside. I'm really physical,
Yeah.
whatever. So it was part of it was that I honestly can't remember where I heard of it. It's a really good question, like where I heard of lost wax casting for the first time. And it's funny because I just did a talk at LSU and for two classes, and I asked both class like, "Do you know what lost wax casting is?" And I think one student in all of both classes held their hand up, and I was like, "Oh Lord, we got to do better at like educating people on what this is." But also like how I must have come across it in working with jewelry or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I did go do a little class in Gallenberg in Tennessee at Aramont for metalsmithing. Funny enough, it was with a professor from LSU. I didn't know that till I got there, but I might have been exposed to it there. I really honestly can't remember. It'll probably come to me later now that you
Yeah.
ask.
As soon as we
But
get off the call.
yeah, but I know for sure that I was going to be able to make bigger things, and that was a big like that was alluring to me. So we we did all that. I don't remember exactly where that. I don't know if I wrapped up like kind of our journey as far as like the business that
Mm.
we once we started adding to the team, we were doing festivals and that kind of stuff. But before we I didn't part it was never really like part of my dream to have like a physical retail location. But Dawson, like I said, is like the visionary kind of person and was like, we need to sell it. We need to have a place to sell it. And that was like, to me, a homebody who wants to be here making jewelry all the time was like, oh gosh, how am I going to be there? I'm thinking I have to be there too. And then, he like lured me in with, we'll just do a mobile store. We'll just do a it'll be a trailer. It'll be tiny. Won't have to like be there all the time. We'll just get one person to work it. And that felt like, okay, that's kind of like the same size as like a festival booth. And I know I'm comfortable with that, but it's just there all the time and we don't have to deal with weather. So like, okay. So we did that. We hired somebody and then that, was like, oh, this works. And if you have good people, like they take care of it and I don't have to be there all the time. And I get to be there, sometimes. And that's awesome because then I have a place to go to meet my customers. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, this is good. And so we did that for like a year. And then it was like, well, he's like, should we maybe move into a physical store? And I was like, I don't know, that's really scary. And then of course we ended up doing it. And now it's like, oh, it's amazing. So anyway, so that's how we got to where we are now. We have like, 10 or 12 people on the team, a physical location. We still do shows, mostly Louisiana, some in Texas, some in Mississippi, and our website, of course.
That's incredible. So you just recently moved into a new location. So
Yeah.
where were y'all all working before this recent move? And then what's it look like now? Because I did see on your Instagram stories that you have like a really cool view in the back, I think, like overlooking
Yeah.
a pond or a bayou or something.
Yeah.
What made you decide on moving to this location? Was it space? Was it the location itself? And talk a little bit about the that transition and why you love
Okay.
where you're at
Well, it
now.
just happened. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
I know, like last week.
yeah. So with we were kind of spread out, like some people were working at the shop, behind the shop. Uh, some people were here, behind our house there, so we were kind of all over. And this was like, we needed a place where we could expand, where we could just invest in more equipment, different equipment, have place to like, for example, I love doing ceramics. I love enameling. I love all these different things, but we just didn't have space to have all of that out all of the time. Like we've been getting into rock finishing, so like cutting our own stones that we would set into jewelry. But that's like a whole area that you need for that. So I have some of that equipment I already have, but I'd have to like put it all up and then take it all back out, and it's a lot of stuff to move, take back. But it
Yeah.
was limiting like where we could explore or grow or that kind of thing, because you just don't have space to do it in. And
Mhm.
so like being able to move to a different location, like where everything can kind of be housed, or a lot more of it could be housed, and we could have room to expand for whatever other opportunity might come up, I don't know. That was on our radar for a long time, and we had actually bought a place on government uh, December 2019, and then the pandemic hit like January or whatever. I think at that point we hadn't heard
Yeah.
about it, and then we were like, "Oh wait, that was okay." So that didn't work. That spot didn't end up working out, but and it just wasn't the right time and whatever. So we got this new area, and it took us a long time to find something like zoned what we needed to be zoned, and in an area that we liked. And it's in Baton Rouge, but it just happened. Like, we had looked at a lot of different like industrial areas, and you go with a real estate agent, you're like, okay, this looks like an industrial area and a big old warehouse. But this place, it is from the front, it's just a warehouse, whatever. But they rolled up the back door, and there's this giant like lake behind it, cypress trees, egrets, garfish, turtles, everything you can think of, ducks, all. It was like a dream. We're like, is this even what? We're like, we'll take it. This is
Wow.
the one. This is the one. Because it just didn't feel, it was hard to find a warehouse that felt mimosa, or what it
Yeah.
felt like, a space that we want to be in that's inspiring, or not that your space has to be inspiring, but it sure is a nice bonus. So when we found that place, it was like, all right, this is the one. And it was basically a shell of, like, just, it wasn't like we had to do a lot of stuff, or like take, as far as like removing some other equipment or some other stuff. It was ready for us to work with. So it's kind of perfect in that way. And then that was, I think Dawson just said the other day, I think we got it April of last year, 2023. And we just moved in like last weekend before last. And so the transition it was super fast. We did it in a weekend. We started on a Friday, and we're ready to move. Everybody got to work on Monday at the new place. Partly because we cast every Wednesday, and we didn't want to disrupt our casting schedule. I think we did have to end up missing a cast, but if we had messed up our schedule, then like orders would get affected, shipping would be delayed. And so we didn't want to mess with that. We didn't want the customer to feel anything. And we didn't really want the employees, like the team, to have to feel a whole lot either. Like we wanted them to be able to go to home we work Monday through Thursday, or at least most of our team works Monday through Thursday. We wanted them to be able to work, leave Thursday afternoon and then show up Monday, and have their desk and be like, they had to take like an hour or so to kind of like get it all the way they needed it, or wanted it, but it's, for the most part, be able to get back to work. So
That's incredible.
yeah,
That's
since then we've
incredibly
just been
fast.
settling in.
Wow. Oh, I definitely like I dream. I have a studio in my home, and so I dream of the day where I buy a warehouse and can move in and spread out, and do what you're living the dream with all this space and a beautiful view. And so I wanted to add, I want to talk about Dawson, like, because you've said a few things that, I mean, I'm literally on the verge of tears. He loves you so much and supports you so perfectly. And I want to talk about that. But real quick about the business. So you started hand making everything with beads, and then you dove into the art of lost wax casting and grew from there. So now, just in terms of, just because I'm curious, honestly, in terms of quantity and serving all the people that you serve, because you're in different retailers, you sell out of your store, your mobile store, and you sell
Well,
online.
yeah, we're in the physical store now, so we don't have the mobile one anymore.
So you're in the physical store and you sell
Yeah.
online. What, like, what does that quantity look like? Yeah, like what kind of volume are y'all
Yeah.
are y'all aiming for? Are y'all
Um,
turning out? And are
well,
you
so
going for sheer volume, or is it like, okay, no, let's spend more time on the collections because you're very
mhm,
intentional about releasing collections with a story attached, so that when
mhm.
when you come out with a collection, I'm telling you as a consumer, it works because it's like,
Oh,
I want a
good.
piece of this. You just
Yeah.
released a collection, like a Texas
Uh-huh.
collection, and my
Yeah.
husband, he loves, we have a farm, our in-laws have a farm, my
Oh,
in-laws have a
cool.
farm, and he loves longhorns, and so your
Oh,
longhorn
that's cool.
bangles,
Yeah.
never, I'm not in the market for a longhorn bangle, but
Yeah.
I saw it and I read the story and I connected with it, and I'm like, well, I need one now. So it's
Yeah.
working. So what kind
Yeah.
of volume are
Awesome.
you turning out and aiming
Um,
for?
So right now like I said, we cast weekly, and we'll do anywhere from like a very small cast would be like 500 pieces all the way up to like 1,500 pieces. So you don't cast like typically one piece at a time. That would be like so much work for one little thing. Yeah, anyway, so we do about 500 to 1,500, average 900, 1,100 pieces a week. But the way that works out is we start in January preparing for the holidays. So as soon as December is over, January, like as soon as we get back, we usually take like 2 weeks off as a team. We get back and we get right into the numbers and the spreadsheets of like what just happened and what do we, because we're limited to, we can, or at least right now, maybe we'll be able to grow more and have more equipment and make more in the new place, but we're limited to the amount of kilns and what we're able to do with the equipment that we have to about 11, 1,500 pieces per cast. So if you like extrapolate that over the year, we can't wait till October to build all the inventory for the year. We've got to do it starting in January, knowing that
Wow.
like there might be a hurricane, there might be some problem with the equipment, and we'll miss certain weeks of casting, and so we got to build in all of that, like so that we have cushion to like make up for lost time, making the pieces. So that's kind of what we shoot for. So we'll start in January, start rebuilding the stock. We also cast what we call the negatives. So any orders that come in that are for a piece that are not in stock is called a negative, because we have less than zero. We cast the negatives every week. So say you ordered a silver longhorn and we happen to not have a silver longhorn that week, we'll be casting that week. But we won't
Mm.
know, like the casting process starts Monday morning and we cast on Wednesday. So if say you ordered your piece Sunday, we'd get it in that cast that week and you'd have it by like Thursday or Friday.
Wow.
But if you don't make that order till Monday night, it missed that cast and you'd have to wait till the next week, the next Wednesday
Yeah.
to get that piece, if that makes sense.
So
Um,
customer experience and customer service and quick turnaround is really important, and not only just individual purchases, but preparing for the holiday season takes so much. And of course, you've been doing this long enough to where you know this ahead of time. That's incredible. I feel silly for not having asked this question already, but would you mind very, very simply, step by step, walking us through the process? Like what is the process of creating one of your finished Mimosa handcrafted pieces?
Okay, I'm gonna try. And we have tried so many times because lost wax casting is such a funky, like, I will sit at a booth and explain it to somebody, and they'll be like, "So there's wax in here?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how did I fail you?" No, it's a very like you'd have to watch it, but also so much of it happens inside of the mold that you can't see. So you're like, you have to see it, but you also can't see it. And so we've had people work for us for like more than a year that like I'll watch them have a light bulb moment of it turning on, like, oh, that's how it. And I'm like, this whole time you didn't know. So it's just, I'm going to try, but just so you know, it is like, it's a tricky thing. But there are, like, if you go to YouTube and just type it in, people have done these like crazy animated videos and stuff, so you can get the grasp. But what we do with lost wax casting for jewelry, they do for like giant sculptures. Like if you go downtown and you see a big bronze statue, it's the same exact process. So if you see a video on YouTube that's like about how to make one of those, it's the same thing. But basically, I take a lump of wax, imagine like a candle or something, you know, like it's a different kind of wax than that, but just imagine you have like a candle, and then you start whittling it with like an X-Acto knife. You know, you're carving and you carve a little thing, and that's me carving the piece of jewelry. So after, you know, hours and hours and hours, I have the piece of jewelry, but it is wax. It is like a replica, is like a, you know, exactly what I want it to be in metal, but it's wax. At that point, I hand it off to Dawson. He will take a mold of it, a silicone mold. So like, I don't know what in the world is that is also silicone that I can help reference this to, but you know, anyway, so he'd take a silicone mold of it. Then at that point, like, I don't have to worry anymore, because that original wax carving, so like some pieces are weeks of carving and like lots of tears and lots of stress. And if something happens to that, like for example, and I feel bad to even say this because I know he was so upset when this happened. I carved this owl cuff and it took forever, and it was the hardest thing I've done. It was super tedious. Weeks of carving. He at the end was like, oh, let me see it. And he grabs it and breaks the wing in half immediately. And I'm like, don't know how to even be. So, and he is just like shut down, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I think he put like $200 on my desk later and was like, I hope you're not mad. But of course I was able to fix it, but it's just that fragile and brittle. Wow. And so like, I don't let anybody touch it or look at it or anything. And in that time period, like in that time before it's been molded, if it gets crushed, all that work is gone. If it gets, you know, broken or whatever, or melts for some reason, all that work is gone. There's no like Control Alt Delete or like go back or anything. To me, that time is really stressful, because I'm just like waiting. Once he molds it though, we can make more and more and more. So he will mold what we call the master. That's the original carving, with a silicone mold. So the mold opens up kind of like a sandwich, and it has like a little port where you can inject wax into it. So he molds that wax, opens it up, takes out the master. And then we have a machine called a Riachi. That's a wax injector. So it's got melted wax in it. You put the mold up to it where the little port is, and there's like a nozzle that goes into it and injects that hot melted wax into the mold. You set it aside, it cools, and you're able to open the mold and pop out a perfect replica of the original master carving. So then we make 50 of them, you know, so you're able to make many, many, many more. You put them on what you call a tree, and there's like a sprue in the middle. So all of these, like say it's an earring, they're all attached to this sprue with little attachments. Imagine like a tree trunk with branches, and the jewelry is the leaves. Well, it's affixed to what they call a boot. And then you put over that, the boot is like a rubber, it's like rubber, and the wax tree is attached to that. You put on top of that a flask, which is a metal cylinder. And then you seal it off, and you fill it with this plaster-like material. It hardens into a mold. So inside of that is that wax tree with all your jewelry on it. Sticking out at the bottom is the boot with the wax, you know, stick. That hardens. Then you flip it over, you unscrew, you take the boot off, and then all that's sticking out is that wax trunk of that tree. That you leave that to harden for a little while. Then you put it in a kiln, upside down. The wax melts out. That's the lost wax, like you losing the wax. So the wax is melting out of that mold, and then leaves a void of exactly what was in there. So the void, where we turn that mold over, pour melted metal into that hole where the tree trunk was sticking out, fill that thing up. It's in a vacuum. There's a bunch of other stuff that goes into this, but basically you fill that thing up with the melted metal. It's in a vacuum, so it's sucking it into all those details and everything. Then set it aside. It cools. Once it cools, you dunk it into water. The mold, that plaster-like material, dissolves, and you're left with just the metal version of that wax tree that you originally had. So then you clip all of the earrings off. So you're clipping the leaves off the tree. And then from that point, we take it and start buffing it. So there's rough metal and it looks terrible. And that's like that's why my hands look really bad because we were buffing yesterday. It's like a mess of a process, especially if you don't wear gloves like you're supposed to. So then we go to the finishing part and we hand buff everything and clean it and whatever. And then we put it through a tumbling system with different like media with different grit that'll like smooth things out. And it does that for about a day or two. And then it's ready.
That's insane. Every single piece that you do, like when somebody goes on your website and they purchase a ring,
Mm-hmm.
you make thousands of them, and every single one is handmade. Every single one is
Every,
it is the result of a positive, negative, positive, negative, positive,
yeah,
negative
yeah,
creation process.
yeah.
And then you turn these over in a week.
Yeah, so we have a really great team, and we've been doing it for a long time. And the people who've been doing it with us now, the two of them just made a year, and the other one, I guess, like 3 or 4 years. And then my husband, as far as the people who buff, so we've all been doing it a really long time now, and just have a good, good flow. And it was a little funky yesterday. It was like our first buffing day in the new space, kind of like, where's that tool and where's this thing? But like I said, they got it set up really fast, and it wasn't as bad as you could imagine a whole big transition being. But yeah, it is crazy to think like that's the amount of jewelry. Now over the years, um, we've gotten different equipment that will make different parts of that process go faster. Like used to, our wax injector was a manual injector that you push the mold onto and you had to hold it just the right amount of time. And a lot of people still use those. They work great. But the Riachi, we're able to program exactly like each piece. So we have like a computer screen with like, say it's breathe bracelet. We can type in breathe bracelet and it knows the amount of wax to inject and the pressure that it needs to inject into that mold. And so I just slide or not me, Samara, one of the girls that works with me, slides the mold into the thing. It presses into the wax injector, fills it up. It knows, it'll show you on the little screen exactly the pressure, the amount of wax that's going in, so you know if it worked or not. And it's a clear mold, so you can see it too. But that makes that portion go a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
The tumblers, we used to use these tiny little tumblers, and you split up all the jewelry and do it. Now we have these giant, huge, like washing machine sized
Wow.
tumblers. We just dump everything into, and then it's like every year we kind of are like, what's the big thing we're going to try to invest in, and it'll make some part of the process go faster. And so anyway, like what you're saying, it is a lot uh, at this point, but it's been slow getting here.
Sure. Yeah. It's so incredible. It reminds me of the value that I should very happily hand over $100 for a ring. Like the value of handmade jewelry is incredible.
What's good about it is for us, like, well, what I should be doing better is educating people on that process. And we do show like, just behind the scenes here and there. Like I said, I feel like that explanation of lost wax casting is so hard, and we still get a lot of questions. I'll have like longtime customers, years and years and years, and we'll post something about it, and they'll ask a question that makes me like realize, oh my gosh, like they still don't understand what am I doing
Oh,
how am I failing them? Like I got to figure out a better way to do this. But it is our job to help people understand that. But also what I like about it is we get the raw material. We get little grains of bronze, we get grain of gold and silver. It's like as raw, almost out of the earth as it gets. And we make it from there to the finished piece in your hand. So we know everything that went into it and happened to it. So it's not like it's got some weird coating on it or some weird like alloy or something that, you're going to have, if you have a reaction, it's because you're having a reaction to like copper, just copper, it's not
in
like,
general, yeah.
yeah, it's not like some foreign weird metal that we don't, or, something like that. So it is really neat to know, like, it's coming from like the most raw state to the finished state, all in house,
Yeah.
and have
All in
control over that.
house. That's it. That's beautiful. I mean, it's so beautiful. A lot of artists who listen to this podcast or, are out there being very hands-on, like they're hand making every single thing by themselves. Um, Hearing from somebody who has put in a decade and a half of just slowly chugging away, being patient, being learning, being an eternal student, not trying to rush, but understanding like it's a marathon, not a sprint. And every year upgrading just a little bit, growing the team just a little bit more. It's possible, it's achievable. And it's like you had mentioned to me before, I think we started recording, that you go in once a week. And so you do your job at home where you want to be. And your team, you've put together a team and they're so well trained and they're so invested in what your goals are for the company, that you trust each other. Dawson's very involved. I can't wait to hear more about what he does now. But I mean, this is such a good example of a success story, and one that it's not over, like I love to hear that you're creating the pieces, that you are carving, like your right brain is ignited by the challenge of what's the next piece, what's the next collection, what am I inspired by at this point in time in my life and if the year, whatever. And I was wondering, because you run the business and it's a big business, it may not feel that big because it's grown so slowly over time, but being a very small business over here in my studio, you got a big business. So how do you balance spending the time creating and being inspired and being led by your inspiration, and then also managing so many people and paying their salaries and making sure that they're taken care of and they feel like they're part of something bigger than just the task at hand? How do you balance that, and how do you make sure you keep your cup filled and you are able to spend time with your kids, because you are a mom, and we'll talk about that too. But what's the balance look like, and how does that feel for you?
Well, I hope that everybody that works with me feels inspired, but the it really, I don't have to, because I have a manager that's amazing. Blair I guess she's been working with us probably, oh God, I'm terrible, but maybe 4 years now. It's been a while. But she, worked her way up and has since become the manager. And that was like a slow process, letting go and delegating. I'm not a natural delegator. My husband and I were just talking about this the other day. It's not in my nature to just be like, oh yeah, do whatever you want. You do it. I want to like do it the way I want it done. And I'm like, oh, I'll try to explain it. And I'm like, it's just easier for me to do it. And then I just end up doing everything, which is not great. But I've had to, I guess, I don't know, maybe around COVID times or right after that, Dawson was like, okay, turns out you can't manage a company and be creative. Like you specifically, me specifically, other people may be able to. I don't have like the skill set or, the bandwidth. Like you said, there's a lot going on, parenting, all kinds of things. And of course I have that thing of like wanting to do everything that I do perfectly. So I'm reading like all the managing books, trying all the tips and tricks and the whatever, and trying to go all in and overdoing everything. And so not doing anything really that well, and it made a lot of mistakes over the years. But at that point, it was really him stepping in and being like, can't do all this. Something has to give, like something, And so it was like, but what does that look like? Like, I don't have my hand in everything every day. Like I couldn't even imagine not having my hand in every little, like we've have people who work for us now that I didn't hire, that I've maybe met once, we just hired them, but there have been, so that's happened. And if you'd have told me that like 3 years ago, I'd have been like, not a chance. Cause I do every, or not do everything. I'm in on everything. I want to see every little email that goes out. I want to micromanage, not micromanage, but kind of.
Well, it's your baby. I mean, you're a creator,
totally.
And you went from making jewelry by hand in your home and selling and like knowing, interacting with every single customer, to now you have employees that somebody else manages. It's so, and like, it's so encouraging and impressive. And I know it was
it was a long, I won't say it was like overnight. I was like, here, take it. Good luck. I hope you do a good job.
Sure.
It was like, could you show me, like it was a lot of that. And like, they were probably like, oh my God, if you would just go away, I could just do this job. And so it took a lot, and there was a lot of ego stuff I didn't expect. There was a lot of like, no one's coming to me to ask me questions anymore, and I didn't know that I even cared about that until it all started
Wow.
creeping up, and I was like, oh no, I have like self-worth wrapped in this. I have all kinds of stuff that was just like I needed to let go of. So it was a letting go of in a lot of different ways, and it felt like I felt like a failure for a long time because I felt like I wasn't able to be a manager. And I remember one time Dawson was like, so you think that God put you on this planet to be the best manager? And I'm like, well, I mean, when you say it like that, probably not. So he's always good at kind of like reality checking me where I'm like, or putting things in perspective where I'm like, okay, fine. I guess that's probably not the role I'm supposed to run with. And then the other part of it was having somebody like Blair come in who is amazing at it and who has natural like talent and skill there and like drive and like is eager to do it and in a fresh way and with experience that I don't have or didn't even know about that existed,
Yeah.
and to see her come in and do things, be like, oh, that's what it looks like to have it done like well and right. So that made it easier to let go too.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of like this push and pull for a little while of like, well, how are you doing that? And then being like, okay, I'm just going to like not even go in that room. I'm just going to like trust the process, and then the process would go fine without me or maybe even better. And I would be like, dang, they didn't need me, but also like they didn't need me, So I would say it took like a full year at least to get really comfortable with like, I'm not going to even go there or I'm not even going to be in on that meeting or, I'll just not even ask about it unless they ask me something. And really it took, part of that was just me letting go, but part of that was also there's so much stuff that happens like on an annual cycle and especially like jewelry, this, like there's different times of the year that things are more, busier or slower or, it's like this is this holiday, this is that holiday, this is festival season. There were things that like we didn't know I needed, oh, I'm supposed to hand over that spreadsheet or that whatever because it just hadn't happened yet and I hadn't thought about it until like, oh, Christmas is here. Oh, we usually do this. And I never even thought to tell you we usually do that. So it was just
Mm-hmm.
like also coming across things as we went that like don't always, that you just didn't know you needed a handoff. So yeah, having a team people who are like better at the task than you are and even excited and energized to do it in a fresh way makes all of that a lot easier.
And so now you can just sit at home and create. That's amazing. Do you do any admin work at all? Have you outsourced all of that? Or
Yeah.
you're still running the
I still
business in
answer
that
a
way?
lot of emails, a lot of the emails, and I mean, it'd be hard to like quantify all of that because if somebody came in and looked and were like, "Why are you still doing that?" But yeah, I mean, we've handed off so much, but then there's still some things like I love just being in the email, like the Hello account, like that's kind of my baby. Blair will come in and help with certain things, but if you email hello at Mimosa Handcrafted, you're pretty much going to get me. So there's definitely plenty of things like that I still do, but and it's stuff that I'm like good enough that it makes sense for me to still do, not like, okay, you need to like let someone else do this because you're messing up all the time.
You may have heard me talk about my little side business, my little fine art print shop. I create an original painting, I take a photo of it, and I print it, and I print it again and again and again. I make hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars a year on prints. It's so easy. And I learned everything I know about creating my own prints and printing them in house from Laurie Ann Gonzalez and her Art to Print course. I highly recommend if you are an artist and you want to make easy money from your original works and even the commission works, you can resell those as prints. I recommend you check out Art to Print. Laurie Ann has a very direct way of teaching, and you are really going to appreciate her no fluff method of giving you information and telling you exactly what you need to do to make making fine art prints in your own studio a breeze. You can check her out online at learn.laurieannart.com. That's learn at LAURIEANNEART.com, or just click the link in the show notes for my affiliate link. Check her out and thank me later. How often are you carving the new designs? How often are you creating like that?
It's definitely like kind of a seasonal type thing, not season with like earth seasons,
Yeah.
more like when I'm working on a collection, and I don't always do it like by collection, but um, I'll be carving all day and night with no good boundaries to work. Like, because the inspiration there, the muse is sitting on my desk or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So I can't let it go. And I'm like so excited about it, and then we'll get through to the point where like we cast the masters and then you buff the masters. And like, then all that's a whole, and we just did this Texas collection. So it's like fresh on my mind. I had been carving that for like months and doing other things, along with it. But then once the carving's done, then it's like the molding time. And then once all that's done, we're starting to produce. Then it's like photography and writing. And a lot of times I'll do the writing like as I'm working on the piece, because I'm like digging in, I'm like feeling it and digging into more about it or behind, facts and things. Like, so for the owl, I had like a spiritual kind of reason why I wanted to make it. But then it was like, oh, what is up with barred owls? Like, let me learn more about that. So I'm learning at the same time and I'm researching them. And then, so a lot of the writing that I'll do for like the story will happen early. Like I'll keep notes on my phone. Like I'll start writing, I'll be like running the lakes and be like, oh yeah, I got to share that in the thing. And then like, I've got a big like patchwork of stuff that like towards the like, when we get closer to the launch, I'll start tightening all that up for like blogs and descriptions and that kind of thing. And then that's where we're taking product photography, editorial photos, just building everything that we would need to have to be able to launch it. So I'm not really carving in that time because I'm doing like, it's still creative work. It's just, and right now, like we're on the tail end of that. And then we just moved. So I'm not like actively, I have like pieces lined up that I want to carve, but I'm not like actively carving. And also it's because, like I said, it depends on the project, but I'll go so all in, like my eyes hurt, my fingers hurt, so there's kind of like a little bit of a recovery time or a whatever.
Yes.
So I kind of like, and that kind of works with like the flow of the launch and the whatever. And then also because I've probably abandoned a lot of things while I'm in that carving time, that I'm like, oh yeah, the SEO on the website and all the links and the whatever. I'm like, oh, I got to get back on, make sure the newsletter is okay. So right now I've been like deep dive on like newsletter content, the back end of the website, like nerding out on all that kind of stuff. And then that'll go dormant again, and then the whole cycle will start over. But sometimes there's like I could wake up, or I could be like falling asleep tonight and get like, oh my God, I got to make this piece, and wake up tomorrow, carve it, and then we'll have a new piece, and it'll happen real fast. Sometimes it's more like this slow inspiration list of things that I'm like, ooh, I really want to somehow work this in. And I've always been inspired or intrigued by this, and I would love to explore it more, so, you're creative, you know how that
I
kind
get
of
it.
process can work. So, I can't say like it starts here and it ends here. That would be amazing. And we used to have with the team they would want to know like, what are you working on? When are we going to launch it? What's the dates? I'm like, as soon as I put a date to it, forget about it. It's probably going to crawl away and I'm never going to be able to make it. Like it's going to, so it's like, I have to just kind of treat it like this, I don't know, precious thing that like, I just keep, I keep kind of to myself until it's time. Okay, now it's time. I made a collection, y'all. So it's not even like everybody really knows. Like Dawson will know because I'm carving like half the, in the dining room. And he's like, what you working on? And if it's too early for him to even see, I'm like, nothing, go away. And, because there's some things that are just, there's a certain a time in the beginning where like, it is too precious and you're not even sure if you like it or you want to go there, and you cannot have other people judging it or questioning it in any possible way because it could like kill it, and then they're in like a little while later, once you've kind of worked through whatever, then it's like, okay, you can look at it, your trusted like inner circle, and then you're like, okay, and if you get feedback, it'll, and I love feedback, and especially from Dawson because like I said, we graduated in landscape architecture together, and it was really heavy on design. So the program at LSU, so they really gave us like terminology and language for talking about design, like scale, texture, color, and really understanding I know what he means when he says that, and he knows what I mean. And so when he walks by and he's like, scales off, I'm like, damn it, you are right. And I trust him because I know we know what we're talking, So like we speak the same language. If it was just somebody else, I would be like, okay, but, but when he critiques it, I have to be ready for like him to give me the honest truth and to know that like, and he's good. So, he's an important part of that process.
Yeah, let's talk about Dawson. And y'all's relationship. What you just described, this vulnerable, precious, keep it to myself process of creating the carvings and creating the original designs for the pieces
That's what,
sounds.
sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, but that's what's so amazing about you, like doing these paintings
Oh,
in front of people. I would be
yeah.
like Gollum in the corner, like can't look at, like no one can look at it until like at least I'm halfway done or something, because them just over your shoulder, oh Lord, that
Yeah.
amazes me.
It's hard. It's
Yeah, that
definitely
would be
hard.
hard.
It's reframing the challenge of it, but and then also kind of doing while every wedding is different, it's the same process, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And so, you do enough of them and you're like, I've got a degree of confidence.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know how it's going to turn out, but I do trust
yeah,
myself enough
right.
to
That's
put
amazing.
something out.
Yeah,
So the process I completely relate to. When usually I in the fall I do commissions, so I'll start promoting them. You got to think
yeah,
back
yeah,
6 months to start
right,
promoting them. So I'll promote them
right.
over the summer and then I execute, and I call it hermit mode. Like
Yeah,
I turn
totally.
in, I turn into an artist.
Yes.
I feel like I stink. I feel like
Oh my God, yes.
I eat, my water intake is terrible, my hygiene is
Yes.
terrible, my sleep schedule is terrible. My husband knows like I need, it's just a hermit mode. Like you
Yes.
need it.
There have
And
been projects, like I have this one project in particular that was for somebody that I had like a weekend, and I remember Dawson just like leaving food at the door and like paying the kids to be like, she cannot be this, she has got to stay in this cave and she cannot be messed with for 2 days. And I'm like up all night, like doing the thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
oh my gosh, completely relate to that.
Yeah.
Different medium, same life.
Yeah.
But it felt, the way you were describing it, felt very, and then bringing Dawson in and him suggesting when it's done, felt very parallel to what you were saying earlier about where you were earlier in your business, and how you were like, this feels good, like this feels safe, this one market, this one,
Yeah.
type of, and he was like, he was thinking bigger
Yeah.
picture. He believed in you and he believed in the market. Like he saw the exchange, he saw the potential
Yeah.
with sales, and he was able to think bigger. There was evidence
Yeah.
because of your existing success, your current success at the time, and then he was able to help you. But he understands you and respects you for who you are and what you need. You need time to accept the challenge of growing, and even then just time, like giving you time. I tend to be a like, think it through and then dive in. So I'm a little faster with that, and then like we'll figure it out as we go. But some like, you need to feel ready, and you need to, and he respects that, and he didn't push that. And each little upgrade, y'all did together, maybe it came from a suggestion of his, and so it sounds like y'all are an amazing team. And the fact that y'all have this parallel training in landscape architecture to where y'all kind of speak the same language, is so helpful, coming from an artist who has a lawyer for a husband. If he could understand the language of art a little bit better, and that using that part of your brain, if he understood that a little better, maybe he would get it. But we both run businesses, and we both
Mm-hmm.
are so we speak that language together
Yeah.
so well. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful.
That's
So
amazing.
tell me what it's like, how you guys, I'm gonna use the word balance, but share what it's like to work with your husband and also co-parent and find balance. And like, what on earth do you talk about on date nights? Do you have a no kids no work rule? Like some people do that. Well, how's it going for y'all?
Um, so I guess I'll go back to like the beginning of him working with me, because at that point I had been doing this with like two kids on my hip, and like you kind of do things however in the world you have to do them, like they don't make sense to an outside person, but you're like, look,
Preach.
attached to me and I got this other one running around eating God knows what. Um,
Yeah.
so like, but they had grown up a little bit. And so when he joined, he's like, why are you doing that like that? And I'm like, that is a good question. Oh, because usually I'd be having Lily on me and I just, that's how I started doing it. And then she wasn't on me anymore, but I was still doing it that way. So
Yeah.
like he was able to kind of see the forest for the trees in the beginning in a
Yeah.
way that I just couldn't. And it was amazing, but also super frustrating because it was like him coming in and be like, move this over there. Why is that equipment here? And whatever. I mean, be like, hey, dang, you're right. Like, yay, that it's going to be better. But also, dang, I don't want you to tell me,
Mm-hmm.
all my problems or whatever. So
Yeah.
it was like a couple months in, I was like, why do I feel like I want to run away? And it was because, this transition that was a tough kind of like in the beginning transition. And then once I recognized like, oh, and he's got his strengths and these are mine or whatever, things got better. And we started, finding our roles and, like, oh, you're going to do all this and I'm going to handle that. And then like, as, new team members would come on or new processes, new whatever, we'd have to kind of reevaluate all of that. Like, oh, wait, now I do this or now you do that. Like I said, 4 years ago or so, whenever he was like, okay, it's time for you to let go of all the management stuff. And I had been doing like, everything from like talking with the accountant type stuff to just all the stuff that
Everything.
goes into the
Mm-hmm.
book, bookkeeping, whatever, that, and having to like hand it over to him. One, he did, and this was like, maybe like it felt so validating with him, like this one time being like, I don't know how you were doing all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, finally, because I kind of thought it was crazy. I kind of thought it was a lot, but also you don't know, you're like much, and people just handle a lot. But for
Yeah.
him to finally come in and be able to be, to say like, holy Lord, like this is a lot. And you were making jewelry this whole time, like new designs. And I'm like, yeah. so
Yeah.
that was just like one of those little like, validating whatever. But he, so it's been there, like it's been like, sometimes it's been really rocky, like something will be going on at work, like either me transitioning something to him or him handling something with the team that I think should have been handled a different way, or whatever. And then it's almost impossible not to go into the house and be like, so anyway, like some other
Yeah.
stuff, we're still, that energy is still there, and that, and that's been really tough sometimes, like really tough. But before that, we had done a lot of like renovations to houses and a lot of like we've worked together in a lot of different ways. So this has been part of our marriage journey since we got together, like handling a lot of decision making and processes of creating things, whatever. So it wasn't like it was just like this thing in our lap all of a sudden. It was something
Mm-hmm.
that we've grown the skills, slowly over all of these years. It'll be 17 years this October that we've been married, and the business is 16. So, and the other part of it is like, we go through seasons. Like I keep using that word, but it really is like that. And I feel like if you try to like be like, this is how it is forever, like that's pretty unrealistic, because the world has seasons. We have seasons,
Mm-hmm.
different times, different things are going on, intensities of like the needs of the kids or the needs of our family or whatever.
Yeah.
So like sometimes we've gone through times where we set a date night, and we do this every Wednesday, or we, once a month or whatever, just to make sure we're getting that time. And sometimes it's like, that is not realistic. Let's just kind of
Yeah.
like be ships in the night for a while, and we're just going to get it done. And I'll see you on the other side. There will be
Yeah.
another side. And then with the kids, we try to split things as much as you can. They're also mostly homebodies too. So we're all like at the house, and he's off like doing things, which works. But now, they're getting older, they're into all the sports and that kind of stuff. So that's been something really new to have to transition with. Before, when we did arts markets once a month, festivals all the time, and that was for at least 10 years we did that. The kids were really little, and either they'd go stay with grandparents or they'd come along with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think until that was done, and really somewhere around COVID was when we kind of like tapered off on that a lot. It was so much. It was an
Yeah.
intense time of life because they were little and we were going all the time. And it wasn't until honestly the world shut down and there just weren't festivals and markets that we
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to go anywhere. And we were like, oh my gosh. So like you could just have your weekends, like
Yeah.
hang out with your family and stuff. Okay. So that's when we were kind of like, oh, we're not going to do monthly markets anymore. We're probably going to, there's some things that they're older now, and like they're in a time of their life where like my oldest just turned 13. He's like an official teenager Monday. So
Wow.
like
Huh.
I
How
feel like
are you?
the clock is just like
Yeah.
a loud ticking. Like my time is limited with them being at home and wanting to hang out with me or be around me. So there are definitely things like weekend markets, festival, traveling to take our stuff other places in other states or whatever, that I'm like, just not right now. Like we're just,
Yeah.
as a family, we're just not going to do that right now. We'll do that in a couple of years when they're either out or don't care about hanging out with us or whatever. And we sometimes we have to learn that the hard way. Like last October, we had a festival out of town every weekend, and it was fun and exciting, but it was also daunting, and we were away from the kids way too long. One of those festivals was like a week long, and we were like at the end of it like frazzled and like, no, we're
Mm-hmm.
not doing that again. So we have like two, and they're not that far away this year, and so it'll be good. But yeah, we definitely make business decisions based on like our family and our, what we're comfortable with right now, and knowing that like things will change. And then sometimes it's like, we stretch more than, and we just know like, look, y'all, you're gonna have to hang out and, with whatever, we're gonna be moving all these boxes, you're gonna help us move the boxes, you're gonna like hang out
Yeah.
and sit on that chair right there while we set this place up or whatever. It's just a day. Or, and luckily they've, I mean, this business has always been there since they've been alive. So they're, it's not like some other thing to them. It's kind of like part of
Yeah.
their life, and they're used to everybody that works with us. Like they know them. Like Lily will be like, if somebody leaves or is not with us anymore, she's like, wait, but like, how do we see them more? Like
Aw.
still, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, well, it's really work that way. And she's like, but like the other ones could leave too, or like, well, yeah, I
Wow.
think they see them as like an extension of like our little tribe or whatever. But in saying that too, Lily especially is like wants to help. She's like one of those kids that just like give me a little task. She wants to be part of the team. So some of it's stuff that's like, if I used to feel like, oh, we keep this very separate. We don't, I'm not going to ask her to bag these things or do this thing. But I read a book. It was about basically like this woman had gone and lived with different indigenous groups all over the world, and
Mm-hmm.
just watched how they raise their children, and then families who had like either come from other countries into America and started family businesses and that kind of thing. And then everybody works in the family business. The kids
Yeah.
start when they're like 8 years old, they're bagging up the bread or the whatever, and how like in those situations where kids aren't given a bunch of little toys to play with, where they're actually given whatever is the safest, like, you're not going to give them a knife and a piece of bread and like tell them to do
Yeah.
something when they're not age appropriate for it. But when you give them tasks that are actually real world tasks that they know aren't just made up nonsense for them to fill their
Yeah.
time
Like they're
with, they
contributing. Yeah.
right, they feel that sense of contribution, that sense of like kind of like, I have power, I have like skills, I have something to offer, I'm part of this. And they feel like, oh, like they feel it, how it affects and how it helps, how like their presence actually is a benefit, whatever. And not only that, they get skills. They get the skill of like learning how to put the thing in the bag, just as you would giving them some little toy that you're hoping they'll learn some skill with the toy. But they're having more fun because they feel like they're part of, and half the time it's actually not helpful. It's actually way
Yeah.
more trouble than it's worth. It's a mess.
Yeah.
You're like, why am I doing this? But at the end of the day, they feel like, I did this, and
Mm-hmm.
I helped whatever. And like they kind of did. And then before you know it, they're 13 and they can actually help, and they are
Mm-hmm.
actually really good at whatever the thing is. And then anyway, hopefully what the book I was referencing um, alludes to, the fact that when they go off into the real world, they have these like real world skills that we've lost a lot of the time because we've lived in these kind of like protected little bubbles with special kinds of toys and whatever, and we didn't
Yeah.
have that like hands-on like teamwork kind of experience.
Also, the added value of seeing their work turn into money to buy groceries, like as opposed
Totally.
to doing it one task forever and ever to receive a paycheck. They are part of a bigger picture, and their whole family, they're helping their parents. Everybody's working for the
Yeah.
business, and the business in turn solves a problem, adds benefit to the world in some way, makes people happy, hopefully. And in your case, especially, it's very exciting to sell jewelry, to make that sale and to see the joy in the faces of your customers, but also in turn, pays tuition, keeps the
Yeah.
lights
No,
on,
it's so
buys
true.
grocery.
Like
That's
they'll be like, I'll be like, here, bag these little things or whatever. Cause they'll be like, give me a task and we'll pay them, it's not like so we'll be like, okay, if you bag all of these, you'll get this amount of money, or you can track
mm-hmm.
your hours. We'll do it that way, depending on the task. And they'll come back like an hour later, like, God, this is horrible. Y'all do this? And we're like, yeah, that's like how it works. Like you do
Yeah.
that and then you get money, and that's how we go to the grocery store, or how we go to and
Yeah.
so it definitely gives them, or has given them, like an appreciation for like understanding what it takes to make that dollar, to make the money. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes they're like, I don't want the dollar, I'm gonna go watch
Yeah.
TV, here's the box back, whatever.
Yeah.
And we're like, obviously fine,
That's
but
fine.
yeah, hopefully just slowly they start to grasp, and by the time they leave the nest, they'll have a better picture for like, oh, you mean, so if I just do this, then I'll get this, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
so
And it's like team building too, because
yeah,
you think it happens often when you just need to get a job just to just to earn money. And so it's like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter what the job is, their involvement and their passion for the job doesn't matter. It doesn't,
yeah,
they don't have to
yeah,
love what they do. They just need a
right.
job. And so you are building such wonderful characters to add to society whenever they leave the nest. Very excited. Chris and I talk about that all the time. Like our girls, we have 3 girls who are 5 and under.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And we talk about them participating in my business, helping with mom's business and helping at the law firm. And he's like, it is not fair. Like, I want them to come and see what I do. And in terms, I'll tell, like, real fast, he writes a lot of papers. He has to read a lot of books, read and retain information, and then
Wow.
compose legal documents. I
Yeah.
would never want to do that work. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that there are people out there that do this for a living.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, he said he was helping his dad, because his dad's a lawyer too. He was helping his dad before high school, through college. And so he said when he got to LSU and he had to write essays, or, write essays of more, weight
Yeah.
than you do in high school, he was like, this is not a 3-page essay.
Yeah. Wow.
They're composing 30-page documents, 300-page documents, like
Oh my
in it,
God.
like nothing of legal jargon. So yeah, just wild. And so he's like, oh, I wonder which business they're going to want to pick to
Yeah. You
work
never
with.
know. They're so, how they
Yeah.
are, so different.
Yes. And
Where
then all 3
ours could
kids.
not be more different. It's wild.
Yeah. Which is great. It's nice to
Yeah.
have different personality styles, because you learn to love and respect the people who have I literally almost said an opposing personality style, like just completely different. So
Yeah.
that's good character building as well. That is so awesome. You love being a mom?
Yeah. It's the hardest possible job, but yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Hardest in the sense of like, well, a lot of senses, but to me, it's
Mhm.
not like, oh God, this is such a drag, it's so hard. More like, I want that to work. I want to do the best of
Yeah.
that, of anything. And it's like the pressure of like hoping that I'm preparing these humans to live in the world, and I'm not messing them up, and like
Yeah.
they feel loved and valued, and we have enough one-on-one time, and did you get, are you stimulated enough, or have you challenged enough, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, like that's probably I fall asleep thinking about business a lot, but I fall asleep thinking, like, feeling, oh, the parenting thing is,
Yeah. Well, good news is that that's the plight of every mother.
yeah, yeah,
You're not
totally,
alone.
totally,
We all
absolutely,
all feel that
yeah,
way. So
absolutely,
this big bad business that you've been telling us about is like nothing compared to the pressure and the high stakes of, making sure you're a good mom and you raise your kids right.
yeah.
Definitely can relate to that. Okay, this has been so much fun. I don't want to get off the phone, but it's got to end sometime. So there's a few questions I would just want to run through that I'd like to ask all my guests, just because my own personal curiosity, but also it's wonderful to get insight from different people in different types of creative businesses, all that. The first question is, what is one skill that you learned in a previous job that prepared you for your current role?
When I was doing, like, in
Mm-hmm.
landscape school, I worked for a nursery here in town that had a landscape installation aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
and I would do consultations all the time. So I mean, like looking back, I'm like, I was a child. I was like a kid,
Yeah.
and he would send me to people's houses. Also, like, what? I would go into people's homes and give them a consultation. Now I'm like, well, that was like the most unsafe thing, but whatever. So I would go, and I'm like, 23 or I don't know, however old, with adults who were ready to spend thousands of dollars on their landscape. And I'm having to, one, sell it to them, like one of the packages, but also I had to do the schematic design while I was
Mm.
there. That's the way
Oh,
his
wow.
business structure was set up. So, like we were talking about doing design work in front of people, it was like boot camp for that. So I would
Wow.
go, I would say, we have package ABC. Now I'm going to do a quick design and then you could pick one of the packages and whatever. And these are like adults to me. I'm like, these are like my parents, who I'm having to
Yeah.
do a design, hope they like it, and convince them to spend all this money on it. So just being confident in front of people, hopefully talking about my design, my creative work in front of people, and then trying to sell it. It's funny, like even right now, I'm like, God, that really was good exposure or whatever experience. I wouldn't have maybe, I would have maybe got to that first arts market and been like even more, in a shell or like not know how
Yeah.
to. So it definitely helped with that.
Yeah, I can relate. Selling experience in sales, just the challenge of trying sales at a young
Mm-hmm.
age, is an incredible experience because you're oftentimes talking to people who are your parents' age and having
Mm-hmm.
to like ask pointed questions and
Right.
give a quote that's more money than you've ever seen in
Right.
one place. It's
Like,
just
and the thought of me today, like someone who's like just started college coming to my house and convincing me to spend like $10,000 on a landscape with them, I'd be like, what is happening? Like, no. So
that's
yeah.
awesome. Okay, what is your secret to staying motivated?
Ooh, that is a good question. I will say, well, there's a couple different things. One part of it is I think it's just a genetic, like my DNA or my makeup is just that way. Like I'm just
Yeah.
a do stuff kind of person. I'm sure part of it could be from people pleasing syndrome or whatever. It could be just like that was my role in my family of origin or whatever you want to call it. To constantly be doing the thing, helping people, doing whatever. The other part of it, though, is especially now when you have a huge team under you and a lot of responsibility to the team, to the business. If I drop the ball, then the thing doesn't keep going.
Yeah.
That's a lot of motivation. It's like pressure and
Yeah.
responsibility. But in the times where I'm not feeling it, that's like, oh, I don't get to not feel it. I got to like get up
Yeah.
and do this thing. So,
Oh, you're a grown up. Congratulations.
yeah, right.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, what advice do you have for artists or people who are like jewelers, people who like the medium of creating jewelry? What advice do you have for artists who are coming into this space nowadays? Like, I'll give you a demographic. 20-year-old, 19, 20-year-old girl who enjoys making jewelry at home and is wanting to either start selling in markets or create a business that is bigger than her, selling on Instagram, a jeweler, someone who creates jewelry coming into this world of selling jewelry. And it could be any advice. What do you think someone should know?
There's so many like things I would have to ask that person, like what's your motivation in getting into this, like what,
Yeah.
because it's so different. Like, so today there's so many, the barrier entry to entry can be very low
Mhm.
if you're just like going to Hobby Lobby and getting like some beads to like throw on a string. And my advice to that person would be like, you're really going to have to find your why, like why are you doing this, and for who. That's a different kind of advice than I'm going to give somebody who's coming in and they're like, I'm going to do all 3D printing and like this kind of thing, or somebody who's like I'm going to hand carve these things and have a story behind it. The skill set and the advice as far as, it would be very different for depending on like what kind of jewelry they're making and
Mhm.
why they're making it. But regardless of all that, the business aspect, it cannot hurt to read every like business marketing book you can get your hands on. I would highly recommend Donald Miller. He's like one of my favorites. Gary Vaynerchuk. I think the last book I read before I quit my day job was Crush It. That was like his first book. And I was like, this is it. It's happening. Yeah, that was the moment that I was like, all right, here we go. This guy who cusses a lot said to do it. It was like my permission slip.
Did you read it or listen to the audiobook? Because I listened to the audio and it was sure. Like,
much better. Yeah. I've listened to all of his books on audio, and I listen to a lot of audio because I'm carving or work. And like when I was doing landscape, I was drawing a lot, mostly just sitting on AutoCAD drawing all day. So I could listen to books all day or podcast. Well, podcasts weren't so big back then, but the other one would be Seth Godin. He is like the guru of marketing, and I love his just like whatever. I love him. I highly recommend reading those guys' books. And then also like Company of One. That's a really great book for understanding like to what end are we growing this thing? You know what I mean? Like, what do you really want your day to day to look like? Like, okay, sure, I could try to build an empire, but like at the end of that, what does it look like? I'm doing a lot of administrative work, or do I want it to look like I'm in my home doing my craft that I enjoy doing? Those are different kinds of businesses.
What's the title of that last
Company
one?
of One. Well, there's Company of One, and then there's also, you have to link it because it's like been so impactful on my business. It's the tagline is like how big companies choose to stay small or something like that. But it's all about like intentionally staying small. But why? And
I know what you're talking about.
Small is relative because some of the companies that they profile in the book are like thousands of employees. Still, but it's like in the ethos of the business and how it's run like a small business.
Yeah.
And
Chase Mullen was talking about that book last time I was talking to him.
I know,
I'll find it and I'll link it.
It's driving me nuts. Yeah, it's a really good book though. Yeah, I would just say that like I said, it would depend on like the kind of jewelry that they're getting into and that kind of thing. Be transparent with your process, with your the materials that you use, the suppliers that you use. Like we use mostly Stuller out of Lafayette and then Grand out of Albuquerque, and we've visited both of them multiple times. We have working relationships with like our liaisons there. They help us when we have a problem with our equipment or we have a question about a process or how is there equipment we could buy to make this part of the process easier? Once you kind of develop those relationships with the people who work there, they know your business, and they we've grown. Like one of our the guy that we worked with at Rio for like, I don't know, it's been 8-10 years probably now. And now when we go to Albuquerque, we meet up with him. He buys our turquoise for us. He's not even at Rio anymore, but he does all of our shopping because he is a jeweler also. And he knows, he cuts stones and all that. And he knows that we just trust him. And at this point, it's better for him to do it than us because we know he's going to get a better product than we are. My point is call those companies or find somebody and let them know what you're trying to do and let them help you. There's so many people's jobs at these places, these suppliers, their job is like customer, to take care of the customers. And so they want to help you. They want you to grow because that helps them grow. So those have been really valuable resources over the years. Because we call, when we were trying to learn how to cast, we'd call Jonathan, we're getting these bubbles or this thing is happening, and he wants you to succeed too. So it's like having somebody on your team that is not really on your team, like in that same way. So I would say reach out in that way, network, get into a business group. I'm on a business group with a handful of local people, Blackbird Letterpress, Culture Guru, that we've been together since pre-COVID times. I don't know exactly how many years, but we'd meet once a month and we'd have a topic or we'd, meet at each other's studios. And sometimes we'd have like a guest speaker. It'd be my turn to present and I'd be talking about bookkeeping, probably not that, but something.
Yeah.
And then we'd all have questions and be able to, bounce things like, I'm thinking about hiring somebody, or I'm trying to figure out HR, or I'm trying to, so having that peer group is amazing.
Yeah.
That's been so helpful. And then, we had kind of taken a break during pandemic times and recently gotten back together, and it's been so neat to see how our businesses have grown in different ways, how we would read books together too, that Company of One and the book we can't think of the name of was one. And then we read a Seth Godin book. We'd read these books and then talk about them together, and what you got out of it, what I got out of it, what does that mean for me and my business? And that, having those kind of people to bounce ideas off of, and see your company from the outside. Like you're telling me all this stuff about my business, and I'm like, what? You think it's big? That's crazy. Because it really, to me, it feels like we're in a tree house, it's just a bunch of friends. Like, I mean, I know that it's bigger than that, but like you said, it's slow. Yeah. It's been so slow that I'll turn around and be like, oh, the other part of that being slow is like, the amount of responsibility. If you'd have told me like 10 years ago I'd have that, I would be like, oh no, that's crippling. I would have so much anxiety. That's crazy. But it happened like a slow boil. Yeah. So, you don't turn around and like freak out. You're like, okay, we can do this.
Wow. So that would be good advice. That would be good advice for somebody starting is don't compare yourself to somebody who's been doing this thing for 10 years plus, because their growth happens over time and with consistent effort. And, because it can be discouraging when you're looking at something so much bigger than where you're at now, and what your capacity is, what your confidence in your ability to do is.
And that stuff is hard earned. Like when they say, when those books are like, it's real hard and there's a lot of failure, and you're like, think it's some sexy thing, like, yeah, it's so hard, I'm going to fail, and then I'm going to share my story about failing. These are not stories you share. These are like blood on your face, tears, ugly cry, like the end of the world feeling stuff, like actual depression and anxiety. Like these are failures that are not cute to post on Instagram. So like it happens like one thing at a time, where, it's not like all at once, but it's one thing that you think, I'm not going to make it through this one. And then you somehow do. And then you get to the other side and you're like, oh, this was the ugly stuff they were talking about. Not that like, I made a mistake. It's like but that's hard earned like wisdom and whatever, that the next challenge comes, and you're like, you have a thicker skin and more armor and more tools and more resources and whatever. I wouldn't have had thick enough skin or enough resilience in the beginning to handle some of the actual failures and mistakes and like hard things that have come along. I just wouldn't have been able to, it would crush me and I would have been done. But you got to go through all that stuff.
That's brilliant. That's such good advice. And it's reassuring too, because it's like, if you're going to join the space, then, tighten your shoelaces and get ready.
That's like, we would say, I don't know if it was like from a book or something, but it was one of those, like, this is why not everybody does this. Like casting is such a heartbreaking thing, because it's like ceramics. Like you open that kiln and it could all have exploded. Like we could have made 900 pieces of jewelry and none of them will work that week because it froze or something crazy happened with the humidity or whatever. And it will break your heart, But that's when you're like, we look at each other and like, that's why not everybody does this. And that's why when we have to pick up the pieces and do it, that's what makes us, sets us apart.
I can relate. Live wedding painting is,
I can,
I know. Can you imagine? No. I can't imagine the process, the grueling process of, and I know you do it in bulk, but I mean, creating each piece by hand. And in such volume, like now, I know that you, anyway, okay. I used to be so scared. I mean, terrified to bring oil paints to a wedding or an event that I was painting at, until I realized that Gamblin has me covered with all of the mediums, the paint thinner, the varnish, the whole gamut. I love using Gamsol as an odorless paint thinner. Okay, this is what I use to wash my brushes to thin the paint. I use a big jug of that to slow the drying time. If I'm trying to finish a painting and layer and do all of that, I use Galkid. It's a very thick medium that I love to use with my oil paints. And let's say it's very dry, it's a very hot and dry environment. I love to slow the drying time with refined linseed oil. This is my medium of choice for my oil paints. And when the painting is dry and I'm ready to send it off to the client, I varnish it with Gamvar, high gloss. That's my preference. And Gamblin has you covered with your preference as well. You can visit their website, www.gamblincolors.com. That's spelled Gamblin colors.com, or you can click the link in the show notes to shop my preference for oil painting mediums. Check them out and thank me later. I'm so inspired. I want to go grab a block of wax and start carving a design. Like, I'm so inspired by what you do and how you do it and the difference you've made in the community. You guys have had this hashtag out for a long time. It's a Mimosa in the Wild. And it's just like a social experiment, I guess. It's a way for people to post their jewelry and tag y'all obviously tag Mimosa, but show off their jewelry and then go out into the world and include their story in your story. Your collectors and your customers, you couldn't have a business as successful as it is now without them. And so this is a great way to include them in that journey. It's so awesome. Thank you so much for coming and hang out with me today and answering my questions and inspiring my audience. What can I do to help you today? So we talked about your new space. Where can people find you? Where can people follow along and kind of see those bits and pieces and glimpses of the process and learn more about the art of lost wax casting and everything you're doing at Mimosa Handcrafted? Where can we find you?
Thank you for having me. And I feel very inspired too. Just talk, even like before the interview, talking with you. 3 kids under 5 is blowing my mind, but amazing. So find me. We have a physical store in Mid-City in Baton Rouge. And then we have our website, mimosa.com, mimosahandcrafted.com. We're on like Facebook, Instagram, all that at Mimosa Handcrafted. And we're posting all the time, stories and posts behind the scenes and that kind of thing. And then on our website, we do have a blog that we keep active, posting new, whether it's like everything from behind the scenes stuff to like how to wear it, how to take care of it, the process, the whole lost wax casting process. We have plenty of videos of every step of that process on our YouTube channel. So yeah, all those places. And in November we have, it's either Hot Art or Cool Nights or White Light Night, whichever one that is, at our store. It's part of the whole Mid-City thing. But we'll have a bunch of makers at our store. Chase Mullins will be there, who we were just talking about. And his art is hanging in my store. So if y'all heard his name and want to go see it, amazing. Chase is,
he's so cool.
And he's so cool to top it all off. And then we have a mega sale. We call it the mega sale. It's our big holiday sale. We have like one big sale a year. And that's like beginning of November at our store. And then we don't really have many festivals, but our store will be open all the way till like right before Christmas Eve. So if you need anything up to the end, we have that.
That's amazing. And online for people listening out of the state. Do you ship internationally?
We'll do Canada, some places in Europe sometimes, but
I hear that shipping very large oil paintings out of the country is terrifying.
Yes.
Awesome. And Mimosa is Mimosa. Handcrafted. That's so exciting. Thank you so much. Everybody go follow Madeline. Mimosa. You're going to follow Mimosa and go buy some of her work if you can. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
You.
Thank you for everyone who's tuning in, whether you're in your studio or on the drive today. If you have a wedding this weekend, best of luck. If you have a festival coming up, best of luck. You got this. And please feel free to leave a review, drop some stars and some hearts, and let Madeline know that you appreciate her time today and mine as well. It means so much when you leave a review for the Composed Artist Podcast. So thank you again, Madeline. Have a great rest of your week. And I will talk to you all next time. Thank you for tuning in and joining us on this journey of artistic exploration, entrepreneurial growth, and personal development. Remember, you have the power to create a life that is both fulfilled and balanced. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe to The Composed Artist on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And don't forget to leave us a review. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more creatives like you. Until next time, keep creating, keep dreaming, and keep pursuing that composed life. You got this.